Podcast. How are you, Chris Burres?
Anthony, I'm so good. I'm so glad to be here. We were kind of riffing before we got started, um, which audience, don't feel bad. We're going to talk about all of it. Sometimes you hear that in a podcast, you're like, oh, I missed some good stuff. We're going to cover it, and I'm excited to hop into this conversation.
Where are you joining us from, Chris?
I am in Houston, Texas.
Cool, cool. I've had a few guests from Houston, Texas, but it's a very big city. So, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not surprised. We have the largest medical center in, I believe, in the planet here in Houston. And so, if you're reaching out to experts, there's lots of research going on. This is a great place to find experts who are doing cutting edge medicine, and kind of in the stuff that we're in, even cutting edge longevity.
Yeah, I figure that because I just find a lot of interest in holistic health. People that want to speak and speak to as many people as possible, and they come reach out to me and join me. So yes, that explains why there's so many Houston, Texas people. But Chris, let's get into how you've arrived at what you're doing today.
Yeah, so I wish I could tell. There's so many stories, right? So I have a supplement company. We'll talk about a key molecule that we focus on, and there are so many people in the longevity space, and the health space, and the wellness space that have these amazing stories, and they're incredibly altruistic. And I have to be honest, I'm a little envious of them because my story, I'm in the right place, right? I feel confident in delivering value. I'm excited that I get to help people on a daily basis. But having a focus on helping people is not exactly how I got here. I actually got here because of a Lamborghini Countach. So when I was younger, I was 14 years old. I had a poster of a candy apple red Lamborghini Countach on my wall. The doors were open. I could smell the leather. I wanted one of these Lamborghini Countaches. And I found an article that said if you want one Lamborghini Countach, you become a neurosurgeon. And if you want more than one, you become an entrepreneur. I'm a 14-year-old boy. How could two not be better than one? So in that moment, I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know what I was going to do, where I was going to do it, how it was going to happen. And my goal going into college was, in fact, I researched for my book, Live Longer and Better. At the time that I went to college, there was only one entrepreneurial class in the entire US of A, right? Only one class, not even a whole course of study. Now, lots of universities have entrepreneurship programs. And I think even today, I probably wouldn't go down the path of an entrepreneurship program because my thought process at the time was I'm really good in math, I'm really good in science, and what is the fastest way to the highest salary? Also, not very altruistic, right? What's the fastest way to the highest salary? So I'd have money to buy a business, right? To invest in a business and become an entrepreneur. And a couple things went wrong with that. First, it didn't happen as fast as I thought. Engineering in 4 years is actually pretty tough. It took me 6. I did get a minor in computer science and a minor in math. So yeah, I am the kind of geeky guy you see in front of you. The other thing that went wrong is I actually started a company while I was still in college. And I started a carbon nanomaterial manufacturing business with my business partner, Robert Wong. And we'll be talking about the carbon nanomaterial that we started the business back in 1991 to manufacture.
Wow, I'm intrigued to find out more. But it's incredible. Like in order to help others, you need resources, right? So you were working behind the scenes to build up a resource base so that you can help others. So yeah, let's
If by help
yeah.
others you mean drive my Lamborghini around town, so again, not true altruistic, but I will say, and it was a great experience to write this book, Live Longer and Better, because I needed to understand I couldn't be happier than what I'm doing today, right? Don't have the Lamborghini, but I couldn't be happier because what I do is I get to be this geeky science guy and have amazing conversations with people like you. And then I also get to reap the reward of this supplement going out, which is actually all these amazing testimonials as they're coming back in, right? And I couldn't be happier. I've ended on phone calls with people who it's dramatically changed their lives for the better. And That's amazing. And I'm absolutely wired for that. You know, if I didn't end up here because of a Lamborghini, I probably would have ended up here because I wanted to help people. So, you know, I do wish my story was a little bit different, but I am here, I am delivering value. So let's go on.
Let's get into the interest in longevity and why you wrote the book, Live Longer and Better.
Yeah, so it's all born out of this molecule. So I'm holding up a model of a molecule. If you're listening, this is a podcast. Just imagine a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. You have a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms, and again, in the shape of a soccer ball. This molecule was discovered in 1985. The scientists who discovered it won the Nobel Prize for that discovery in 1996, so a short 11 years from being discovered to being awarded the Nobel Prize. The molecule is absolutely amazing. Part of the reason they won the Nobel Prize is because this molecule performs as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. So it makes better inks, better batteries, better tires, better photocells. And this is where people get nervous, right? We're like, are we talking health supplement or are we talking inks, batteries, tires? And no one in your audience woke up this morning, looked out at their car and thought, I wonder what components of my car battery I should be taking on a daily basis for my health. And actually, the story gets a little worse first. So as you're looking at the soccer ball shaped molecule, there's 20 shapes on the exterior of it that are the same shape as benzene. Now, benzene is ubiquitous in our society. We don't have modern society without benzene. Just kind of give you some proof, look or glance around you. Anything that's plastic, gone without the benzene ring. So ubiquitous and necessary for modern society. But when it's all by itself, when you just have benzene, it's known to be toxic and it's known to be carcinogenic. So because there are kind of 20 benzene-ish shapes on the exterior of this cage, they assumed that this ESS60 molecule would be toxic. So they put it in a toxic, this is where the story starts to get better. They put it in a toxicity study. Instead of being toxic, the test subjects that they gave it to, in this case, Wistar rats, lived 90% longer than the control group. So that's the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, peer-reviewed published research. And I'm very proud to share that my lab provided the material and my lab is mentioned in that original study. And I'll wrap this up with our most consistent testimonials. People take it in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. Now, that longevity piece, right, this 90% extension of life is the really short answer of how I ended up in the longevity space.
Okay. So it was sort of by coincidence, or
It was because of a Lamborghini, obviously.
Yeah.
Like that's how I ended up here. It's fully intentional.
Yeah. They have that saying is that you don't get what you want, you get what you need, right? So
Exactly.
yeah.
Apparently, I don't need a Lamborghini yet.
No,
So.
you don't. No, not yet. It's going to keep you working harder and busier and discover more molecules that are helpful for society. So
Yeah, well, and
yeah.
continue to tell these wonderful geeky stories and help even more and more people with the supplement. So yeah, it's a wonderful path.
So the ESS60 molecule. Now, 60 for me stands for the 60 carbon atoms in it, right?
Yep.
The ESS, what's that?
Elemental safe spheres, right? So it is a spherical molecule, looks like a soccer ball. There is the element, which is carbon, and what we have and what is in our supplement is a safe sphere. So that's what the ESS60 stands for.
Okay, and really intrigued as to, obviously, they tested this to test for its toxicity and found out that it gives longevity. Now, in that process, once they discovered that, they would have thought, well, how does it do that? How does this molecule do that? So that's my next question for you.
So if it's okay, I'll walk you through this journey because this is kind of interesting. So basically, that study came out in mid-2012, right? These rats live 90% longer than the control group. In mid-2013, we started getting phone calls from this crazy, wacky group of people called biohackers, which I can affectionately call them. I am a biohacker now, so it's an affectionate term. And they were saying, hey, how much of this stuff should I be taking? And what my business partner and I were hearing was that stuff that you sell to research institutions around the world to put into ink, batteries, tires, photocells, how much of that should I be consuming? And my business partner and I were in 100% agreement. We thought the number should be zero. I mean, it's inks, batteries, tires, and photocells, right? Let me be clear, in the literature, it was safe, right? You have this 90% extension of life in every application where it's processed to the point that it's ESS60. It's actually showing benefits. We're just ultra conservative carbon nanomaterial scientists. This is another thing I wish I could share, that I was super smart and I saw this study and I launched a supplement the next day because it's clear that it's safe and it's going to make a lot of money. Maybe if I'd done that sooner, I would have a Lamborghini by now. But I'm just not that smart. We're just really conservative carbon nanomaterial scientists. We actually added not for human consumption to our labeling in mid 2013. So think about that. From 1991, when we start the company, all the way to mid 2013, we don't have not for human consumption on the labeling because there's no crazy wacky biohackers trying to take it. So this actually led to these really interesting conversations where, so from 2013 and on, we'd get 2 to 3 phone calls a week, and they would sound something like this. Hey, Chris, I got to share with you, my knee pain is gone. And I'd be like, hey, Joe, you mean the knee pain of your rat? Because it literally says not for human consumption on the labeling. And then Joe would say, yeah, exactly, Chris. So, hey, if my rat weighs 275 pounds and does HIIT training on Tuesdays and Thursdays, should my rat be taking dosage before the HIIT training? So we knew what was going on. And because the literature said it was safe, we were okay with it, but we were still ultra conservative. So quarter after quarter, my business partner and I are getting together and do we want to get into the supplement space? And I think it's fairly generous to say that the supplement space is challenged, right? There's a lot of challenging things that happen in the supplement space. And so quarter after quarter, we decided that we didn't want to get into that space. It's very different than being a commercial provider of carbon nanomaterials. In fact, even in this time frame, I found a research paper that said that 50% of the supplements that these researchers had purchased off the market did not have in them what they said they had in them. And so again, challenge market, we're not getting in it. Finally, at the latter part of 2017, a guy with a big YouTube following, that's how everything happens these days, right? He starts talking about all the benefits he's getting, taking it on a daily basis. And our phone went from 2 to 3 phone calls per week to 10 calls a day. And at that quarterly meeting, my business partner and I were like, this is when it hits us in the forehead. Well, this is a bigger opportunity than we realized, right? And we looked back at that paper that I had found, and that 50% of the supplements on the market didn't have in them what they said they had in them. We knew that would happen in the industry. And we're uniquely positioned because we're the oldest and longest manufacturers of this molecule on the planet. We've got the lab, we've got the equipment, we've got the know-how. And so we decided this is something that we should pursue. And we asked ourselves 2 questions. The first question is a moral question. Am I comfortable selling this, right? I take it, my wife takes it, everybody on our team here takes it. So absolutely, by the way, it's not a requirement to work here. Like you don't clock in and then somebody hands you our security hands them a shot and they take, no. Really all the team members here have access to the research, and probably more importantly, they have access to the testimonials that are pouring in from our customers. So yeah, everyone here takes it. So morally, we're very comfortable selling it. Next is the legal question. So here in the States, it's the FTC and the FDA. You got to cross the T's, you got to dot the I's. We're, of course, doing that. And so at the beginning of 2018, we started bringing this product to market. That's a lot of story to lead me up to, well, how does this work, right? Because now my role changes from being the chief scientist of a carbon nanomaterial manufacturing business to being the chief scientist of a supplement company. I've got to figure out how is this working. And I mentioned our most consistent testimonial is people take it in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. First off, it's pretty incredible. I don't know if you're aware, I ask people regularly if they're aware of what you could take in the morning to positively impact sleep at night. I hear people say, oh, if you exercise in the morning, yeah, that'll help you sleep at night. If you get exposure to the sun, right, you can get your circadian rhythm in line with the rising and falling of the sun. That will help you sleep at night. but nobody yet has given me any kind of indications that, hey, here's a particular supplement and maybe if you have one, let me know. I'd love to know. So where I landed first is, if you just improve sleep, you will improve your mental, physical, and emotional well-being, right? So that's the first and easiest place to hang the hat. The next thing was, why did these rats live longer, right? In fact, 90% longer than the control group. And I kind of looked at the medical community and what do they think about aging? And they tend to think about aging as an oxidation and an inflammation process, right? So in terms of antioxidants, there's an ad hoc study out on the web that shows our product to be 172 times more powerful than vitamin C. There is peer-reviewed published research that shows it to be 125 times more powerful than vitamin C. So I'm in Houston, Texas. We put a big old check mark next to antioxidant. When it comes to anti-inflammatory, I don't know how things are in Australia. Here, the FDA has some really tight measures on how you speak about anti-inflammatories. And I think it's for good reason, right? So they think about conversations of chronic inflammation as conversations about the diseases of inflammation, which are also the diseases of aging. So arthritis, Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, cancers. So if I come onto your show and the FDA hears me saying that we address chronic inflammation, what they hear me saying is, I cure cancer and I cure cardiovascular disease. And that is not what we're claiming. There's literally so much work and so much expensive testing that would need to happen in order to start making those claims. What the FDA will allow us to say is that we address inflammation associated with exercise-induced inflammation. So you think about having a tough workout or just walking farther than you normally do, and waking up that morning and feeling some sense of inflammation in your body. In that case, the FDA allows us to say we address that type of inflammation. And so that was really kind of the place I landed second. We have a new theory, but I've been talking a long time, so maybe you've got some questions or guidance.
No, I'm keen to continue to explore how this molecule works, the mechanism of action in the human body, and the benefits. You're sharing the benefits, so really keen for you to continue to share how it helps people and what it's doing in the body to actually drive these effects, such as you mentioned, it's a powerful antioxidant. We're now talking about it's a powerful anti-inflammatory associated with many chronic illnesses. So yeah, continue on the sharing the story.
So excellent, because this starts to get fun. I actually have a fun biological analogy, and so I'll get to that. But let me kind of describe the science behind it. So our current theory is the BOSS theory, right? So this is buffering oxidative stress system. So we know from peer-reviewed published research that this soccer ball-shaped ESS60 molecule gets into the mitochondria. We also know from way back in the 90s when it was discovered that it can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles on the exterior of the cage. So how does that kind of manifest in the body, we believe? So your mitochondria, a little refresher, powerhouse of every cell. There's between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria in every cell in your body, except for your blood cells, which have 0, and your brain and neurons, which have 2 million. I always find it fascinating how much energy our nervous system uses relative to our other systems, right? It's just significantly more of a power drain. Like every power source, there are negative byproducts. You think about your car going down the road, you have exhaust. You think about a power plant, you've got smoke coming out of the smokestack. In the case of mitochondria, it's reactive oxygen species. That's the negative byproduct. I like to picture these like little bumper cars, right? Like everything they smack into, they're causing rust, oxidative stress, oxidative damage, ultimately inflammation. And internal to the mitochondria, you've got glutathione, the antioxidants, glutathione and melatonin to manage those reactive oxygen species. But what happens when your mitochondria are stressed? Well, really your cells are stressed. They need more energy. So now you're stressing your mitochondria. They start producing more reactive oxygen species than the resident glutathione and melatonin can manage. By the way, I love to point out, how do you stress a mitochondria? Like if you're alive in modern society, you have stressed mitochondria, right? It's smoke, smog, smoking, drinking, stressful conversations, traffic. If you're in an airplane, you've got an increased EMF exposure. So you've got stressed mitochondria. It's typically has reactive oxygen species running around and causing that oxidative stress. And that's where the ESS60 molecule comes in. So remember, from peer-reviewed published research, it's in the mitochondria, and we believe it holds on to up to 6 of the negatively charged reactive oxygen species. So now they can't run around like little bumper cars and do damage. And then when that mitochondria can replenish the glutathione and replenish the melatonin, then they can manage them appropriately. So I've got this fun analogy. I don't know if you've ever heard of a biological analogy that starts with Mardi Gras. So it's the end of Mardi. I think they should all start with, there's a lot of biology happens at Mardi Gras. They should all start with Mardi Gras. So it's the end of Mardi Gras, and you have these drunk reactive oxygen species running around on Bourbon Street, causing oxidative stress, oxidative damage, spray painting cars, all the mess that the drunk reactive oxygen species cause. And you've got the glutathione and melatonin. That's the New Orleans Police Department, the glutathione and the melatonin coming onto Bourbon Street, handcuffing themselves to those reactive oxygen species and getting them off of Bourbon Street. But what do they do when they're overwhelmed? They take those reactive oxygen species and they stick them in a paddy wagon, right? They attach them to this exterior of the ESS60 molecule so that they can't do any damage. And then when the New Orleans Police Department can replenish the glutathione and replenish the melatonin, then they can handcuff themselves to those reactive oxygen species and get them off of Bourbon Street. And that's why we say that the ESS60 molecule is the boss, a buffering oxidative stress system. And a broad view of what we think is happening is we're reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, right? And if you reduce the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, you should have exactly what we do have, which is testimonials from head to toe.
Wow, it's incredible in terms of how it supports the body. In terms of how this molecule was discovered, was it actually synthesized in the lab, or it's actually an extract from a naturally occurring compound? Where's it come from?
That's a great question. It is, in fact, so everyone who's listening to this has, in fact, been exposed to this molecule. And as evidence, if you take the soot from a candle flame and usually collect that soot with a cold steel plate over the candle flame, and you get that deep, dark soot on that steel plate, that soot has parts per million or parts per billion of the ESS60 molecule, right? So we have all been exposed to minute quantities of this molecule. Now, in order to make an appreciable amount, then you do have to make it in a reactor. By the way, it is very challenging to make this material, just to kind of run you through it. You need to vaporize 2 graphite rods in an inner chamber, so no oxygen, that will kill the reaction, and at a slight vacuum. So it's got to be able to hold a vacuum. It turns out that graphite is one of the hardest materials on the planet to vaporize. So you need local temperatures of the sun to vaporize it. So there's a looking glass to watch this reaction. And as it's occurring, if you don't have welder's goggles over that looking glass, you will actually burn out your retina. And if you let that light shine on your skin, you will get a sunburn, right? This is local temperatures of the sun. And then that's how we make appreciable quantities. In terms of how they discovered it, there's a fantastically complicated piece of equipment at Rice University. And basically, they took a carbon sample. They shone a laser at that carbon sample, so that vaporized it. It also reached temperatures of the sun, vaporized it. They took a puff of inert gas to take that carbon vapor into a mass spectrometer, and they were able to see what molecules were made. What's really fascinating, well, there's so many fascinating things. They are in the book. But what's really fascinating is when these grad students, not the people who actually won the Nobel Prize, always interesting, when these grad students were tweaking the settings, they got a peak at 60 and a peak at 70. And the question is, they thought they were making flat sheets of carbon, really graphene. It didn't have that title yet. And why would you make more flat sheets of graphene at a carbon count of 60 versus 59 or 61, and 70 versus 69 and 71? And so they figured that there was something structurally different about them. They put their heads together. They figured out that it's this soccer ball shaped molecule. And then they published in Nature, one of the most prestigious magazines to publish as a scientist.
Wow, it's fascinating because graphene is a great semiconductor, right? And and it's probably going to be the next biggest ways in which we compute, in terms of it, like, at the moment, silicon, but I think it's moving towards a more graphene type molecule, right?
Well, that's really interesting. I don't follow graphene that much, other than people are scared of graphene oxide. And so I have to constantly tell them that graphene is a flat sheet. The ESS60 molecule is a round ball. It's like comparing a ball bearing to a sheet of paper. They're structurally extremely different. What's really cool to add to kind of graphene is there's this collection of molecules called nanotubes, right? So if you think about taking that soccer ball shape, splitting it in half, and then extending it. So now you got the end caps of a tube, and then you just take a graphene sheet and you make the tube. That's called a nanotube. And different diameters of nanotubes are either conductive or insulative, and they're nano. So you could have a mile of it in your hand and not see it because it's only like 10 angstroms across. Like, it's amazing what could be done. They do believe that the space elevator, I don't know if you've heard of this concept, but there's a concept called a space elevator. If you think about taking a washer on the end of a string, right, and swinging around, that string stays very taut because of the centrifugal force of that washer. Now, if you had some sort of heavy satellite in space, the Earth is rotating. At some point, it would pull on a string like that washer does, and now you have a taut string between Earth and this satellite. And the carbon nanotube is it's the strongest material in tension that man will ever find. The reason we know that is because the carbon-carbon double bond is the strongest bond in chemistry. So that could make that space elevator possible. Now you have problems because you make you got to make however many miles out into space, and you can't do that in one run. And so you've got to connect these, and that's the weak point, is when you're connecting nanotubes. But fascinating thought processes or thought experiments to consider making the space elevator. By the way, the end of the space elevator is now you got this rope, and you could just attach something that crawls up it, right? And now you aren't having to spend all the fuel in order to get the escape velocity. You're actually just crawling up a cable, which
Wow.
you could do with almost anything. And
Wow.
frankly, you could probably run the electricity up the cable so that you've got your power and you've got the elevator that's taking things out into space.
I'm just fascinated as to how this molecule interacts with light. It's like absorption and emission spectrum. Have you looked at the interaction with light?
Yeah, we have, scientists have to some degree, and we have provided the material to a lot of scientists. I know that we use a specific spectrum to identify the concentration of the product, right? When we're trying to compare it to, I mentioned 60 atoms and then 70 atoms. When you're trying to separate those, you use light to identify the concentrations of those two molecules in a solution. There are some features that suggest, protective effects. I know that there's one study out there that said, oh, if you expose it to what they considered in this particular study a reasonable amount of light, then it becomes toxic. Their reasonable amount of light was like leaving olive oil open on your back picnic table for a month. That is not reasonable. I would not recommend anybody consume olive oil or any kind of oil that has been open and in the sunlight for a month. So, no detrimental effects. We have looked into potentially making a product that has a SPF value, so a protective against the sun value. It gets so much more complicated to get into that type of industry. That actually puts you here in the United States in the category of an over-the-counter drug. And so it gets significantly more complicated. So does not continue to be on our radar, but it is something that we've thought about.
Yeah, well, because I'm just wondering if one of the mechanisms is its semiconductor ability in the body to conduct light. So I'm just fascinated about the molecule and its role in the mitochondria, because light has a significantly well, it's so important to the mitochondria's function. And I'm wondering if it's helping that process in terms of the conduction of light and conduction of light within the body. So in a positive way, I'm not
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about,
I think to kind of pontificate on this, right? Red light therapy, good for mitochondria, right? And it's actually helping the electron transport chain. That is the chemical process, as complicated as it is, incredibly complicated, to produce more energy. So red light therapy is more focused on that electron transport chain, producing more energy. And our current theory, right, this Boss theory suggests, hey, at the end of that electron transport chain, where the red light therapy has enhanced the energy production, when you enhance the energy production, you're also enhancing the negative byproducts, these reactive oxygen species. And again, this ESS60 molecule is kind of acting like a bucket that holds them until that mitochondria can manage them. So I think those two technologies can run synergistically very well.
And in terms of the, once it's mopped these ROS species, captured the 6 of them, which it, has the 6 electrons, it's grabbed them, then obviously the body probably gets rid of it, right? Does it, do you know how it's excreted from the body? Do you know what the half-life of the,
Yeah, so 2 things. Current theory, we believe that ESS60 molecule stays there. And then when that mitochondria replenishes the glutathione and melatonin, it just does its normal job, right? So its job is to interact with those reactive oxygen species permanently, and that's how it manages them, right? So then that frees up that ESS60 molecule, as long as it stays resident, to grab other reactive oxygen species so that, again, they're not running around doing damage. So entirely supporting your body's natural process of managing reactive oxygen species. Now, in the literature, it is understood that the molecule is cleared out of your system in 10 days. That is supported by things like a testimony. My business coach describes that for 50 years, he needed an alarm clock to wake up. When he started taking MyVitalC on a regular basis, he actually wakes up before the alarm clock. Now, he's a business coach, right? So he's out, he's got late night mixers and dinners, and he's always on the go. None of that seems to matter. Now, if I haven't given him the product in like 10 days, then he starts to need the alarm clock again. So that fits really well with the multiple studies on different animal models that this clears in about 10 days.
And so you're not required to take the supplement on a daily basis.
So there's some debate there. There's a lot of work that we could do in terms of understanding proper dosing. What we ultimately did is we did an allometric calculation from what was given to the rats, taking into consideration the different metabolisms of humans versus rats. And then we landed at the 5 mils or 1 teaspoon per day. Is it possible that you could take 1 dose and that could last a week? I would say that it's in the realm of possibility. My experience. So in 2018, we start bringing this product to the market. I'm taking it on a more regular basis. I won't say on a regular basis because it wasn't part of my coffee routine yet, right? And so I could get to the latter in 2018, kind of probably halfway through 2019, I could get to the latter part of the day, be thinking, oh, I'm tired, I need a nap, or I need another cup of coffee. And I could remember that I hadn't taken my product that day. Right. So I do think that daily is better. Daily has an impact, but there is more research that we could do in that area.
And so it's great for anyone that's really looking to support the body in detoxification, lowering the reactive oxygen species, reducing inflammation, helping the body heal. As you mentioned, it really supports a good night's sleep. So it's very supportive in terms of anyone that feels that they're a bit they've partied a bit too long, or so it's
you're saying a bunch of words that are triggering some things for me. So in a good way, right? I'm not saying I'm getting triggered. So detox. There is one piece. So that original study had so many active components to the study. Actually, my director of research, who's a former practicing gynecologist, came to me and he said, hey, this paper could have been 5 separate papers because there's so much nuance going on. One of them, and I'll start here and then I can get to the detox. So a typical Wistar rat lives 32 months and has a known amount of tumor mass in its body. The longer it lives, the more tumor mass it has in its body. Even though the MyVitalC rats lived out to 60 months, 62 months, and again, full 90% longer than the control group, none of them had any tumors. Now, I've told this story to some people and they're like, hey, cure for cancer. And I'm like, no. And then I follow that with another, no. There's a big difference between dealing with a cancer that has metastasized and being what's called a cancer preventative. We know things as simple as good exercise, good sleep, good nutrition are cancer preventatives. That just throws this into that realm. I am going to add one caveat. There's this amazing Petri dish study. By the way, the lowest level I consider lower than anecdotes is Petri dish, because taking something from a Petri dish into a living creature is non-trivial, right? Like there's all sorts of things can go wrong, but this is still a fascinating piece. So you take a Petri dish with cancer cells and healthy cells, and you introduce an anti-cancer agent. So that anti-cancer agent is a poison. You're hoping to poison the cancer cells before the healthy cells. In the presence of the ESS60 molecule, that anti-cancer agent has increased efficacy against the cancer cells and protective effects for the healthy cells, right? So more cancer cells die, less healthy cells die. Why do we think this is going on? Well, if you think about the boss theory, it's operating at the level of the mitochondria, which is dependent on the energy source of the cell. Cancers use a different energy source. So there are functionally and practical differences between how a cancer cell's mitochondria operate versus a healthy cell. And so that's where we think this is having a potential positive impact, right? So potentially being a cancer preventative. Now, the other piece that you kind of reminded me of when talking about detoxing, they took a separate group of rats, and they gave one, and this is also what happened in the longevity study. They gave one group of rats water, so that's the control group. One group was given olive oil, that's a semi-control group, and then one of them olive oil with ESS60. They injected these rats with carbon tetrachloride. Now, carbon tetrachloride is an oxidative agent that attacks the liver. They let those rats kind of process this carbon tetrachloride for 24 hours. They euthanized them, and then they dissected the livers. The rats given water, the control group, showed no improvements in the liver. They were going to die. The rats that were given olive oil showed some improvement, but were also going to die. Only the rats given olive oil with the ESS60 molecule, their livers were almost completely recovered, right? So to say antioxidant inside the liver, I mean, we've got a lot of good, strong data that would suggest that's true. Now, you also mentioned party, and then we're talking about liver. And so, we have to be really careful. The FDA considers discussions of hangovers to be discussions of alcohol poisoning, and poisoning is actually an FDA issue. So we can't make claims about that. I can just share, if I were to drink, I would take extra. And I have done that experiment for 5 years, and the experiment has come out 100% of the time positively. Like it's
Wow.
really uncanny. So I know Aussies tend to, not all. Actually, one of my best friends is Aussie, and he doesn't drink at all. And everyone's like, "Are you a real Aussie?" So I know that might land well in down under.
Yes, we have that UK heritage, which it's got a bit of Irish mixed in there as well. So, yeah. Yes, really fascinating. There's definitely some other mechanisms of actions. It's we haven't yet discovered, or you haven't, or your team hasn't yet discovered that must be going on within the body. Obviously you've got the boss one, and you understand that, but there's other ones running in parallel that it would be interesting to find out where the study lands on those additional mechanisms of action on the human body, and this importance on extending life, but as you mentioned, it's live longer and better. It's not just live longer. You got to be better, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I listened briefly to your podcast. I think it was 2 ago. You were talking about longevity, right?
Hmm.
And you said something that I had never really thought of, which is that some people want to live longer because they haven't fulfilled their purpose. And I'd never thought of that, right? And I'll give you the perspective that I end up coming at this, right? Because I'll share this story with as many people as I can. Honestly, as many people will listen. I'm about to go to a conference in Tampa, and I'm going to be sharing this story, 150 times or something. Like so, as many times as I can. But I share the story, and there is typically, right, these rats live 90% longer. I typically get 2 responses. One of the responses, if they're from New York, they're like, why would we want rats to live longer? Like, you are an evil person. We need to bury this research. Like, this is like, why are we even discussing this? And then less facetiously, a number of people will say, why would I want to live longer? And I'll be honest, at first, it struck me because I don't know, the same way that I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur at some point in my life, I knew I'm going to live to 125. Like, that's my target. I'm going to live there. If I'm being honest, it wasn't going to look pretty, right? There's going to be eking across the line, rolling, crawling, dragging, whatever that looks like. So for me, living longer was something that was just always on my radar. And then I realized what was really happening. They weren't hearing this study where rats live longer. They were just hearing extended life, and people can't separate having an extended life from living in some form of impairment, right? Infirmment. And so for most people, if I live infirmed, then I'm not interested in living longer. But if I change the question, so I'm like, Anthony, hey, if you have the same mental capacity that you have today, and you have the same physical capacity that you have today, would you then be interested in living longer? And usually, not always, usually the answer is yes. And in my mind, I think the opposite. It's a really interesting debate. The ones who don't say yes at that point, I think, don't have fulfilling lives, right? And so they want to check out. And you kind of make the argument that there's some people, and I'm sure this exists, who are like, I haven't really done much yet, like, and I would like to extend my life for that purpose. So it's actually your podcast brought kind of a new awareness to me.
Nice. Thanks for sharing the feedback. And I've noticed in your background, you have like a vision board, and I can imagine it's a lot different to that vision board that teenager had of the Lamborghini, right? But you at least got your vision board is expanding.
Yeah,
And yes, and I can
for
see
sure.
testimonials on there. What's the most heartfelt testimonial that really lit you up or just made you feel like you're onto something? Like it's
So
just this is
I'm gonna share one with you, and there's a number of reasons why this one lands so well. One, the guy is in the health and wellness industry, and then two, it's with pets, right? So if your audience is listening to this, and you might be going like, well, what percentage of this is placebo effect? Here's the reality: 48% of it is placebo effect. The same way as when you take your statins, the same way as you take your antibiotics, the same way as when you like 48% of it is placebo. So that's absolutely true. But what isn't placebo is when you see improvements in pets, right? So that's the other reason that I really like this one. So there's a guy, Kyle Zagrodsky. He is the CEO and owner of OsteoStrong. This is a global franchise. They help people build bone density with really short workout routines that are super easy. I mean, you have to exert yourself, but they're super easy, and they're 10 seconds, like literally 4 10-second holds, and you're building bone density. So that's pretty fantastic. And he's been in the space for a long time. He shared with me, so I got the chance to interview him, and then I sent him a collection of products, and he shared later. And actually, this is one of the testimonials on Google, right? So he took the time to type. This is a guy who's running a global franchise. Took the time to write this. I couldn't be more appreciative. He said that around the time that we interviewed together, his son brought home not one pug, but two. He kind of joked like his son should have asked permission. But anyway, his son brought home 2 pugs because the runt was in such bad shape that he didn't want to leave it. So this runt comes home. Something's severely wrong with it. It can basically has a hard time walking, walks in circles. It's shaking so much it can barely eat. He takes it to the vet. The vet is like, this is water on the brain. This runt is not going to make it. Within 2 days, he's got my products, and he's giving our product 3 times a day to this pug. By the time he wrote the review, he's like, this pug is 80% better. And when I took it back to the vet was like, this is a miracle. Like, there's no way I would have thought this would happen. And then Kyle finished with, I will never not take your product, right? And I think that checks a bunch of boxes. What I can also share that I think is really important is people ask, how quickly is this going to work? What does the time frames look? And we like to think of things in terms of 3 months, and I'll kind of walk you through that. So I mentioned our most consistent testimonial: take it in the morning, mental focus and energy during the day, better sleep at night. So month 1, we really are looking for focus and energy. This is being able to do more at work, being able to work out more, having a positive energy and focus impact. And we just get that testimonial all the time. The one that I'll share is there's a lady out of the UK who took the product in the morning and then recorded a video for us in the evening. She's an influencer, so she recorded a video in the evening. And she pointed out in that video that she didn't finish her cup of coffee. Now, if you're a coffee drinker, you're like, if you noticed that you didn't finish your cup of coffee, like, it's a big deal. And I'll tell you, before I was taking this regularly, I was at least a 2 cup, sometime 3 cup a day person. I am now about and frankly, it's mostly like the pomp and circumstance of coming in and making it, and it smells amazing and it tastes good. And then I'm like, an hour later, I still have half a cup. And so sometimes I choke it down. Sometimes I just throw it away. So that's what we were thinking about: focus and energy in that first month. The second, we really start thinking about that sleep. Part of that is because everyone gets like an extra half hour or a half hour more or less of sleep, maybe even an hour more or less of sleep every night. And a lot of people have a hard time kind of equating them starting the product and actually noticing the impact on sleep. So really at about month 2, we start to notice that. And I did share already my business coach, who again needed an alarm clock for 50 years. When he's taken the product, he no longer needs the alarm clock. So that's what we're looking at about month 2. And then month 3, and I have to be careful, right? Because we can't make disease claims, and we're not going to. This is where kind of the mitochondria benefits really start presenting, and you start noticing. And the example I'll give is my father-in-law was actually overweight and had a cane to walk. And when he got to about the 3-month mark, he didn't need the cane anymore. So what that meant is he was walking more, and he ended up losing a good amount of weight, right? That was not our product per se. It was the fact that he was actually now able to walk on a regular basis. And so that's kind of how we map out the first 3 months on the product.
Amazing. I love those stories that you just shared. It's really inspirational and really making a profound impact in a positive way on people's health and well-being, longevity, health span. It's really nice to hear that. And obviously you've got a special offer for the Health Up listeners. Please share that special offer with them.
Yeah, so we made a special URL for your audience. So it's myvitalc.com/health up. There's also a $30 coupon code on that page. We're not going to give it to you. You got to go to that page. Plus, the deals on that page are pretty amazing. As you're kind of going down the page, the first thing you'll notice is there's 18 biohacking tips that are free. We just need your email. I compiled those because I did a longevity summit, and in that summit, I interviewed 57 experts, including Dave Asprey, Ben Greenfield, Dr. Stephen Gundry, some pretty hefty people in the longevity and biohacking space. And I compiled 18 biohacking tips. So I asked everybody, what are your top 3 things that you would do? Compiled those. So those are in those 18 biohacking tips. The next is you'll see our olive oil product. That's our recommended product. You've got the option to buy 2 because it's a discounted, and 3, and then 6. There's good discounts there. And then we also have a face serum. It's a 2-part face serum. I'll just share this. So we didn't get to talk about it much, but I'll just share this. The Boulder Institute of Longevity, I was on a Zoom call with them, 5 of them at a conference table. They came to our booth at A4M in Las Vegas, and this is a little bit of hyperbole, but basically they were like, hey, longevity, get that out of the way. Hey, better health, sleep, whatever, better mitochondria, get that out of the way. I am here for your 2-part redo skin reduo set. Like, so that's how much they loved it. So you have that option. And then there's another option where you can buy the individual olive oil bottle, well, a set of the 2, right? Those are available there. You can hit 2, 3, or 6. That's the right approach if you're thinking about a 3-month impact. And then there is a little link right under those that's for a subscription, and there's an additional discount. Please take advantage, even if you just want one set, take advantage of that discount. Our customer service team has 1,000 5-star reviews on Google. They are not trained to talk you out of canceling your subscription. They're trained to help you with your subscription cancellation. Take advantage of that discount. The reality is most people just stay on subscription. So it's pretty fantastic. And then the last thing that I'll share is at the very bottom is the link to the book. Now you can find the book, Live Longer and Better, on Amazon for $19.95. And then on our website, it's also $19.95, but I have a charity piece I'm really proud of. If you opt right there, there's the option to get an autographed version. I'll autograph the book for you. That's $10 extra. 100% of the $10 goes to Operation Underground Railroad. You may remember a movie called The Sound of Freedom, which is an amazing movie about a horrible topic that should be wiped off of our planet, which is child sex trafficking. Operation Underground Railroad is doing a great job trying to get that off of our planet. And so 100% of that signature fee goes directly to them.
Fantastic. And to the listeners, I'll include those links in the show notes so you can go directly to the show notes and click on those links and follow Chris's instructions. Chris, I have 2 more final questions for you. Okay. The first one is this ESS60 permitted for athletes, like elite athletes competing at the Olympic level?
So I will say 2 things because I am a very transparent person. We have not done the very specific testing that is typically required or whatever that allows athletes to rest. I know of professional athletes who are taking this, and it is carbon. It's olive oil and carbon. There are no laws in for professional athletes saying you cannot take olive oil or you cannot take carbon. So the chances are, I'm a scientist, they're like 0.0000000. They're 0. I mean, there really are 0 is the reality. So we'll probably do that if our kind of audience in the professional space grows, then they could rest at ease. But I literally have Houston Texans athletes who are taking the product and still playing. Right, they're not retired, and we have some retired ones too. So actually, it is not a problem. But I will not say that without sharing that the very specific test has not been done.
Yeah, no, thank you for being so transparent. And yes, I can imagine it really helps recovery between training sessions so that, they can maximize that recovery.
So since you brought that up, I gotta, so we have a 2-time US ultra running champion, Anthony Kunkel, who absolutely loves our product. And this is such a fantastic thing. By the way, he's probably one of the best biohackers I know, right? So independent of the fact that he's an actually insane runner, like he won a US championship at 50 miles and at 50K, right? Like there's no jokes here. And my first conversation with him was pretty fantastic. He said, Chris, I was taking 1 serving of your product. I didn't really notice a difference. I joke, like all good biohackers, he tripled the serving, which, by the way, there are things that you should not triple, right? Like rapamycin, if you're even going down that path, which I would say be very cautious, definitely don't triple it. So there are things you need to be careful. It's okay with this. He said once he tripled the serving, he felt that our product could be the difference between somebody having running as a hobby and running as a career. That's what impact. And he said this, he said, I don't think your product speeds exercise recovery. I believe that it prevents damage in the first place, which if you think about reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, that would be reducing damage in the first place. The reason he said it, because he doesn't have a mitochondrial measuring machine or whatever, is he said, because on the last 5 miles of a 50-mile run, which is a phrase you will not hear very often, where strength and stability were previously a problem, they're no longer a problem. So yeah, I'm glad you brought up athletes because it's amazing, and he spends time. He'll actually be we'll be in December. We'll be in Vegas for the A4M Longevity Fest again, and he joins us and works the booth with us because he loves the product.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing, Chris. And my final question for you, what are your top 3 biohacks?
Oh, that's a
Or
great
longevity.
for
Longevity, yeah.
for longevity. So I can tell you, I have dramatically increased my protein in the last 12 months. I've added about 5 pounds of muscle mass without changing my workout routine, right? And I had been doing the same basics workouts for 5 years. So the increased protein did in fact increase my muscle mass. So that's really important to me. By the way, I'm 56, so this is an age where you're not normally adding muscle mass. So I'm very proud of that, and I think that's important. A certain amount of good lean muscle mass is very important to address aging. The relationship between sarcopenia and all-cause mortality is a very direct correlation. So you need to have muscle mass. You also need to have muscle mass for quality of life, right? If you can't stand up, if you can't go to the bathroom because you can't stand up on your, like, these are things that are really important for quality of life. So I would say that's number one. What would I say is my number two? I love sprinting. So sprinting is, I don't know, you stop it for a super long time when you're a young kid. If you take kids to a field, what do they do? Like, you don't even ask them, you don't encourage them. They just start running around, right? Like, just like dogs with the zoomies. We're born to run like that, and it feels so youthful that it's absolutely amazing. And when you're thinking about movement, you should be thinking about 4 things. That's VO2 max, so increasing your VO2 max. That's the resistance training. You should be sore 1 to 2 times per week. You should be doing balance training, and you should be doing flexibility training. Those are things that you should be doing, one piece of that every single week. So sprinting, great for VO2 max. It also is great for testosterone, which is good for both men and women. So women should not be scared of that. It's just boosting your own natural testosterone, really important. So that the thing that I've been playing around with right now is I'm taking a lot of creatine. The data on creatine for muscles and brain function are pretty significant. I don't know where it sits in longevity, but I'm enjoying. One of the things that creatine will do is take water and put it into muscle, so that will generate some muscle mass or some muscle volume. And so, so creatine, I've been playing around with creatine and increased protein consumption. I wonder if there's anything else that I could throw. I mean, I do, of course, take my product every single day. And when recently in the family, everyone's like, I feel that tickle in the back of my throat. Take a little extra MyVitalC, and it just doesn't seem to manifest, right? So somewhere in there is MyVitalC.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Chris. I really appreciate you enlightening enlightening the well-being of the listeners. Yeah, I'll include those links and in the show notes that listeners can reach out to you, get your product at a discount, and yeah, really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Anthony.
Thank you. And to the listeners, please share this episode with others that could benefit from living longer and better lives. So please share it far and wide, and I would really appreciate that. And check out Chris's website and the great products and books he has on offer to really enhance your well-being. So thank you, everyone.